All right, so this video is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be more like a podcast. Typically, these videos are me answering questions that my daughters ask, and I will still do that kind of stuff in the future. But there was some things that came up that I just wanted a different format. I felt that needed to be addressed because I don't just answer my daughter's questions. I work as a high school science teacher, so I'm often answering lots of different questions. And recently, I had a student. We'd just finished a lesson. We'd done a lab, and they were working on the assignment that was associated with that lesson. So I'm up, I'm walking around the classroom, I'm answering questions, I'm helping people out with different concepts. And this one student stops me and she says, "Mr. Wilson, is it true that in other countries the kids don't go to school all day?" And I thought we were about to have an interesting conversation about the different lives that people live, and I was specifically queuing up some of the stories that have been shared with me, especially by people who work in the church, work in ministry, who have gone on mission trips to developing nations. And a lot of times when they take those trips, they see uh, young children, even elementary age kids. They are out working somehow. They're selling things, they're doing odd jobs, and they're doing it specifically to help fund their education because it's not something that they get paid for by the government like they do here. And in a lot of cases, they have to walk to school, ride a bike to school. The transportation is not easy. So I'm starting to get all of those stories sorted in my head. And I reply, I was like, "Yeah, it's true. In some nations, the children don't go to school all day." And she replies, "Well, how did they get so lucky?" And I was flabbergasted, floored, disquieted. And it was a moment that really illustrated to me that as a culture, at least here in the U.S., maybe all Western nations, hard to say because I'm not familiar with all their education, we have really devalued what education is and what it's supposed to be. And it links up with another story at a school that I worked at before. Drove a bus. Don't let my current school know that. I'm trying to avoid driving a school bus again at all costs. But so I got involved in a lot of the transportation discussions because, I was part of the transportation team. And I remember one time there was going to be some winter weather, and ultimately, the roads were not going to be terrible, but there were certain parts of the bus routes that were not going to be able to run because the buses couldn't make it over some of the country roads if they were wet and icy. And I remember whenever we were talking about this, several people saying, if you don't run the buses, there's a lot of kids who won't be at school. And again, like that was something that stuck with me because we have this system we've created and we spend billions of dollars on it every year. We have laws that require parents to try and educate their kids somehow, and we have all these standards that we've built to try and provide the best education possible. One of the things I talk about often with my students, because they often don't realize the amount of qualifications required just for me to be a regular classroom teacher. So, I have a master's degree. I've passed several subject matter tests that are more difficult than anything that I'm ever going to make them take. And I've been background checked numerous times to make sure that I am not a criminal. And all of that is just to get the basic level of certification to try and be a classroom teacher. And all of that has been built and constructed and paid for. And yet, if we don't run the big yellow buses that take the kids to and from school, they won't show up. And I think it's really just indicative of losing sight of what this education is supposed to be. Originally, and for a large stretch of human history, education was a luxury good. It is not something that you got access to unless you were wealthy and powerful. And as our societies opened up, we tried to make that available to more and more people as a way to equalize everyone and to produce meritocracy, where it didn't depend on the family that you were born into or how much wealth that you had to start with. You had access to the resources, so that if you were someone that worked hard and that were capable, that you could access those educational resources, and you had an opportunity to build a life of distinction. And I think it's safe to say that we've lost that. So no longer is it a path to opportunity. No longer is it a way of equalizing individuals. It's, in a lot of students' mind, it's a chore. It's something they have to do, and if given a choice, they would just do other things. And I think even families, like, they enjoy their children going to school. They are happy to take them and fill the time. They're certainly happy for the students to mark the milestones that come with education, going up grades, and then whenever you get older, participating in sports, doing homecoming, prom, graduation, sort of checking all those boxes as you go up. But at the end of the day, if it was really too difficult, they'd just leave them at home. And if you're hearing this, then you're probably not part of the problem. You've probably been served this because some algorithm noticed that you engaged in educational content, and so it's something that you probably appreciate. But it's possible that you need to hear this message, or that you need to share it with someone else. That for those of us who are consumers of education, right, families, students, we really need to get back to viewing this as a quality opportunity. We need to get back to seeing it as what it started out being. It was a luxury that was only offered to people because it was a life-changing sort of event to be able to be educated, that it was something to be cherished, that was something to be valued, and to be eager to obtain, right? That it was a way to increase the power that you had in society because of the knowledge and the intellectual capability that you had. And those of us that are acting as educators, we have to be dedicated to offering that as a product to our students. We're not engaged in a job training program. We are not trying to equip students with handy dandy life skills that they might use somewhere. Like, we are, in reality, preparing people to be citizens, and not just citizens in the sense that, they may vote and they may pay their bills and things like that. They're going to run the world. Like, they are in charge in ways big and small that we often overlook ourselves. It's not just about whether you vote or not, or who you vote for, but the way that you spend your money, the way that you live your life, the way that you run your family, the business choices that you make, like all of those things determine the course of the way that the country runs. And the idea of education is to prepare people for that responsibility. Because if we're going to have a nation where everyone has the opportunity to make a life of distinction based on their own hard work and ability, then we should prepare everybody and give them those work ethic and as much knowledge and ability as possible to go make that life of distinction. And if we're going to build a nation that is run by the people, the government that is in place is, by our founding documents, at the consent of the people. It only exists because all of the people that are within that government choose it as the best form of government. Then we need those people equipped to make good choices. And I think we've really fallen very far afield from that. And the idea that we have students that don't see the opportunity, that don't see the duties that they have in the future, the impact that they can have in the future, and they're just not ready to prepare for it. It's just coming to school is another thing that they have to do, and it's really just an impediment on their time, is a shame. And I hope that we can find a way to do better in the future.